I'm sure many of you believe this was the biggest change made in the Tottenham versus Chelsea game. But I'm here to tell you exactly what Enzo Maresca changed, the game plan he went into the game with, and how he pulled off this tactical master plan against Ange Postecoglou's Tottenham. Right, now that we're on the tactics board, let's get in to the shape and how we sort of set up in that first half, which Badiashile is a big talking point for, as is the position of Caicedo, as is the position of Enzo Fernandez and Cole Palmer. Now, again, as usual, a lot of the midfield configuration, a big part of how Chelsea set up this team. But what was the idea from Maresca in that first half? Well, Badiashile starting at right centre-back. I did predict this anyway. I think Maresca likes Badiashile. I do. The problem is that we saw in the first half is that we did encounter those passing angles to be a little bit off, having a left footer at right centre back, especially because in the back four, they were almost looking to create this as a back four in terms of in possession and stretch Badiashile all the way out to this side where his angles, oh, that is a terrible arrow, but his angles just were not optimal from this position at all. Then you had Caicedo, who was inverting into the pivot from right back. Again, I said that we probably should have started Gusto in my preview, but I did say that it's very possible that that Caicedo would start in this position, and that he did, inverted in to this position here. Again, so that's why we saw a little bit more of this pivot staggered in this direction, with Lavia sort of central here, Caicedo dropping into these pockets between the winger, which was Heung-min Son on this side, and then the number 8, Sarr on this side, and Solanke, which again we're going to talk about. And then Lavia again in that sort of central spot. And this gave Enzo, once again, that sort of ability to drop in and out on this plane, which we spoke about in a previous video before. How he can drop into this space, become sort of almost that 3-3-4 with Palmer pushing up. But he can also then push into this half space, making that 3-2-5 or 3-2-4-1. And he can be a real pain in this attacking plane. And that happened from the very get-go. And one thing we're going to dispel straight away is I think from the get-go, the game set and the plan was clear and it was correct, in my opinion. I think Chelsea knew how to play around this 4-4-1-1, the 4-1-4-1, sorry, and they knew where the space would be. As I predicted, Bissouma playing in this DM spot, he attached to Palmer and he had more bias towards following Palmer's side, even when he was in these sort of central spots, trying to be between the two, whilst they were trying to, again, make this 4 and cut off progression into these pocket players. Bissouma had slight bias every single time, even if it was just this much towards Palmer's side, because Palmer is so threatening in the league now that he's made himself like you have to stay by his side. He is making teams double up on him, man mark him, all these things. And this is something I sort of touched on earlier in the season, that just because Cole Palmer might not be he's had a few games where people have sort of moaned or groaned and been, oh, Palmer's getting man marked out of games, but this is part of it. This is part of being that good of a player, is that you then afford other players gravity around you because of your gravity, because of how good you are, and the fact that you're attracting all these players in, it then will leave somebody else spare, inevitably. And this is exactly what it did. For Chelsea, they were building up with again, we get the slip out of the way. I think those two slips, Chelsea gave a 2-0 lead literally to them. I think Tottenham come out the blocks fast, and I don't think that helped because, again, it forces a few errors and you have to be a little bit quicker on your feet, and then a few slips occur, and just like that, you're 2-0 down. Yes, credit for Tottenham for coming out the blocks fast, and of course, it's poor from Kukurea, but what more? It's a mistake. There's not much he can do. He changed his boots and it didn't happen again. Whether you want to put it down to the boots, whether you want to put it down to sort of a slow start and just losing his foot, and it's really up in the air. But the thing is, it happened. And what I loved about this performance is the way that we got back into it. Sancho's goal, so important, because not only did it help Chelsea to get back into the game in an inevitable we need a goal, but it also just restored a little bit of calm back into the game, which is exactly what Chelsea needed. Now, the progression, like I said, they were moving the ball really nicely in these areas. And what was evident is because of this Basuma tracking over with Palmer, always you could find this spare man. Always. whether it's a little bit deeper. If this 4 had pushed up to really aggressively press in this scenario, Enzo could drop into here and he could receive the ball on the half turn and then he could attack, which is something we did all game long. But also even higher up, if they were dropping off slightly, there was still spaces for that ball to go first time, Colwell into Enzo, and again, Chelsea are away. They're in this position. They've got essentially a 5v5, but a 5v5 where all of this space, it's a bit of a rhombus shape, but all of that space is clear for Enzo to drive forward, pick a pass, and as well, because he could then attract a player in himself by driving the ball, he could then give it up to Sancho, who then has even more options. And for the goal, I'll flash it up on screen now. What Enzo does really well is he follows his run. He gives the ball to Sancho for that. Again, he sort of Cucurella receives the ball and gives it to Sancho even, because again, on the one occasion that Cucurella gives the ball to Sancho, is the actual occasion that the winger does his job in terms of cutting inside. What I mean by that is what I think is mainly wrong with Tottenham's press is that their wingers, Chelsea do press in a 4-1-4-1 at times. The difference is that these wingers, instead of staying attached to these men like this and like this, where they have to apply pressure, and then obviously they're trying to stop those balls into the wide spaces as well. What they do well is they also track into these areas to stop this ball if that's the spare man. So what Madueke's done a lot this season, and that's why I give him so much credit as sort of an out of possession winger, is he drops in and he follows one of these sort of players. What happened for the other goal is then there's another spare man, of course. What happens for the Sancho goal, Enzo drops into here, the winger drops over, so you've got coverage there, coverage there, coverage there, coverage there, and coverage there. Now the spare man, Cucurella, moves up a little bit on the outside of Enzo, and the space is now Cucurella. He's the free man. Ball goes out to Cucurella. He can then drive, give it to Sancho, and that's where his goal comes from. Enzo then joins the attack, makes a brilliant run into this space, taking away a man so that Sancho can then cut inside. Again, offering variety. Sancho, we know this about Sancho. He's very good out wide. He's very good with those little 1v1 situations, but he does need support with overlaps and underlapping runs. And Enzo, even though he's not expecting the ball to come, he has to make that sacrificial run. And that's something he did very, very well in the game. And something Cucurella did very well in the second half as well, linking up with him. But that was key for the goal. So that is very important to touch on. The other thing that I wanted to touch on, so we spoke about the 4-1-4-1 and how it can sort of be got at in terms of, again, gravity here, free man here. And Chelsea play through that pressure really well because look at the technical quality in this side. Colwell, the ability to play out from the back, Lavia and Caicedo, the ability to receive the ball with their back to play, but also just connect dots to the point where Lavia at some times in this half was receiving the ball here, back to goal. Again, he's got Dejan Kulusevski usually on his back. And he was able to find these sort of passes. At one point, it was even like a little Ronaldo chop, like spin. And Caicedo arrives in this space, and it's Chelsea now out, and they're facing forwards. And it's those little third man combinations, but without the usage of a third man, essentially, because, like, I mean, the third man being Caicedo, but like Lavia could do it even on the ball when he receives it, and then he takes time and he'll spin out himself to find the second man. So Lavia's press resistance in this game was so important, and I think the fact of this is even more important because if Chelsea start to just bypass this area because they know that they're going to have sort of man marking here, and they start to bypass that instantly, what Tottenham can then do is they can play higher up to stop that, or they can drop slightly off and look to almost cover that angle a little bit better. But what Chelsea did really well is they looked to force the ball into here purposely to initiate that Tottenham press because they knew that if that ball went into here, that's when these guys stepped up even more aggressively. And the 4-1-4-1 press looked to really put the squeeze on Chelsea, as you can see here, literally man for man, to the point where then that ball around the corner into Enzo is even more on. And by doing that, they were initiating the press themselves. That was the idea. Maresca knows that they're going to do this. So very, very clever, very good adjustments, again, like game plan. But now let's talk about the adjustments made because I've said this before. I don't think Lavia would have come off if it wasn't an injury. So I do think as much as people are like really praising the adjustments, I do think the adjustments are more of an angle bias thing to do with Badiashile and getting a right footer on that side of the pitch, rather than adjusting the team to control the game. Because I think we controlled the game in the first half, barring the first 15, 20 minutes where we conceded 2 silly goals from slips. And then we also, again, we nearly capitulated and conceded a third. But beyond that point, I thought we controlled really well. And I think that the game plan was spot on even in that first half, as I said, with Lavia in the team. However, Lavia comes out again, injury. I do think that is an elbow of excessive force. I do think it is, but we can have the same argument with the Casado challenge. I don't think the Casado challenge was. I think it was a yellow. But again, you can hear the argument 100% because it is high. My only argument for the Casado one is I do think he slightly stops the momentum just as it touches the ankle. It doesn't look like he makes huge force with the ankle, but it is above the foot. It is like above, and he's got his studs up. So, like, what can you do? Both could have been red cards on a different day. Anyway, Lavia goes off injured or hamstring injuries and also on a yellow card. So I think all of this plays its part. In comes Malo Gusto. This changes the entire sort of stratosphere of how Chelsea is setting up. Cucurella now moves forward. Badiashile, switch sides. So you now still got Colwell in the middle. Again, key because Colwell was so good in that spot. Gusto now comes into here instantly. Casado can now start in a central area. Enzo is now going to play deeper, which is a key part of this half as well. And Cucurella is now going to be that spare man, making those sacrificial runs into the channels to help Sancho, and also just drifting in and out, receiving the ball and circulating it nicely in attacking areas. Still going to have this man-for-man pressure on Palmer, and that's okay. But I think Enzo dropping deeper into this deep line playmaker role, we've seen it a few times this season, but I think yesterday was just the epitome of Enzo Fernandez in this role. And I think you can see it in so many occasions. I think the control is through the roof when you dropped him into this area, purely because of that ability to switch play from deep, which is something that I think was emphasised in that second half as well. I think Maresca almost opted to, almost when these players are dragged up high and Palmer can sort of drag Basuma away, hit that pass, Enzo, and let Neto run at a doggy because it'll be 1-on-1. So I think that was something that was highlighted in the second half. In terms of structure, very much the same. Cucurella pushed into this number 10, which we've seen Gusto do this season. Did it a very good job of it. I'll flash up a few images on screen now showing Cucurella becoming that spare man, receiving in the pockets, like we said, where these players, the number 8s, apply pressure to the pivot. Cucurella is the spare man, and Palmer is dragging Basuma away from play. There was one occasion where Cucurella drifted over to the other side of the pitch, where Palmer had drifted Basuma even wider. So Cucurella basically received it in like literally a number 10, as central as he can be position. He makes the run into that pocket of space instead because he sees that there's an opening for it. And I think that's the little intelligence that Cucurella has to do that, and Maresca clearly trusts him to do that role. But of course, like I said with Enzo, is in this area, he can just dictate play. He can get the ball. He can spray the ball at all different lengths. He can get touches. He can help to progress play with little round the corner balls into Cucurella like this. He can link play again, pretty much like Casado and Lavia did in the first half, with little link ups into these spaces. Even his tight ball control and dribbles to get out of these areas himself were very good. And of course, then we know that for the goal, Cucurella manages to attach with a winger from left back, take him all the way into pretty much into the box at the point. Again, obviously, this is not how the back line was set up, but the point is he took the winger with him, where Enzo then arrived, and I'll flash up the image now for Enzo's goal, in just acres of space. And him arriving from deep like that is even better than when he's in the 10 because he's got time and space and he's the spare man. And he really looks like he's sharpened up those finishing tools lately. He looks very much more in control of his shots. He nearly scored one earlier in the first half, I think it was, or it might have been early in the second half, where he tried to curl one into the bottom right corner. I think it was early in the second half, actually. But just unbelievable efficiency lately from Enzo in terms of goals, assists, and just really just grabbing the game now and really starting to assert his dominance on the game. And I think it is very much helpful to the fact that he's now got even more athletes around him and even more hard work around him than he had before. The wingers are getting even more involved in terms of on the defensive end. Kukurea in this spot actually helps Enzo because he's so quick to work back and be aggressive and tenacious that Enzo's got support of both Casado and Kukurea around him. When we speak about that 3-3-4 like this, look at the names around Kukurea. Now this is Badiashile on this occasion, but you've got Colwell, who again he's more the cover type. Gusto really aggressive in his duels, again very mobile. Casado and Kukurea very tenacious duel winners. Enzo himself, when he's going side to side as well, I think he's a good duelist. I think he's good at winning the ball back in those areas. I just think he struggles when you really stretch the game and he has to go box to box defensively because his mobility is not what he relies on. He relies a little bit more on that awareness and IQ to step into challenges as and when he sees fit. So I think that seeing Enzo in that role was just absolutely amazing. That emphasis on those fast switches out to Neto and even to Sancho on the other side. Maresca's tweak, optimizing the passing angles of Gusto. Like I say, getting a right foot on that side just makes it easier to find those passes down the line, but also just to recycle play at a faster rate because he can sharply move the ball quicker because he's used to those passing angles more so than the Badiashile. Spurs winger issues is one thing, like I said earlier in the video. I do think that they just do not seem to want to follow players into those areas enough. And I think the aggression with how much they... I'm going to get rid of a few of these lines because it's getting confusing. I think the aggression and the fact they only want to attach to those wide centre-backs, I think it is an issue in terms of being able to find these pockets of space, which I think Ange does need to tweak. And the other thing that we touched on, the importance of triggering the Spurs press by entering the pivot before moving into this zone so that you can move these players up away from this zone and open up this space even more so than Chelsea did. So overall, that is what I would take from this game. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Tomorrow, we are going to check out whether I think Chelsea are in a title race. We're going to assess Liverpool. We're going to assess their run-in of the season, Chelsea's fixtures, all the things, little sort of fixture blocks of fixtures that each team have. And we'll go into detail of whether Chelsea are or aren't in a title race. And we're also going to have some other content on the channel this week, probably a West Ham Carrick video at some point as well. So please, please, please do leave a like to support the channel. All the support really, really does help as we lead up to the last month. We're in December. We're trying to push for as much as we can, daily uploads before January, and then come the 1st of January, we're going to try and take things to a whole new level, podcast dropping hopefully, and we can really try to expand the community. But thank you everybody that's involved in the community. I really do appreciate you all and all the support you're giving me to allow me to do this and to continue to grow the channel and just my overall platform in general. Drop a like, let me know any other videos, any other things you want covered. Leave a comment what you thought of the game down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.